What is conscious leadership? So conscious leadership is the practice of being aware of what's actually occurring in the moment. So what's occurring in my mind, what's occurring emotionally, what's occurring sensationally inside of myself, and also what's occurring over there in you, and then what's occurring in the room. So when I'm really present, I can pay attention to all those things. When I'm paying attention to all those things, my ability to innovate, to make decisions, to stay focused is much, much higher. So conscious leadership really is the practice of being aware of what is occurring right now. It matters a lot for leaders whether they're conscious or not, because to be unconscious means to be living from fear. And to be living from fear means that we have to have some kind of constriction going on in ourselves. And that constriction affects our thinking, it affects our feeling, and it affects our the way we literally physically move in our bodies. All of that impacts our ability to make wise decisions. It affects our ability to connect well with others. It affects our ability to stay relaxed in the moment, where learning occurs the most, when we're relaxed, to really innovate. And especially these days when things are moving so fast, being able to innovate quick really matters. So the more present you are, the more available you are for disruption, for really interesting kinds of thinking that you couldn't access when you're staying in a familiar, more constricted place. One of the things that we all know is that culture matters a lot, and we're starting to see that more and more, especially as these millennials are coming online, because they really care about culture. So whether you're a startup or whether you're a longer-term company, making sure that you have a culture where people feel like they can thrive will allow you to attract the best talent and keep the best talent. And it will also, again, allow you to have more of that innovation coming through. So we would say, especially as we're moving into a world of more complexity, you can't afford not to learn how to be present anymore. It's now going to affect your bottom line in a lot of important ways. So we would say conscious leadership is for the startup and for the long term, for the small, for the big. Uber is a great example of a company that has a fantastic product that was building quickly, but because leadership was unconscious, they shot themselves in the foot. And so now what they're creating is drama, which is the big payoff you get from being an unconscious leader or having an unconscious culture is lots of drama. So now all that creative energy that they could be using in innovating now is going to go into defending themselves against all of this, the lawsuits and all these other things that are coming at them. So they're a great example of pay attention to what you're paying attention to. One of the things we say is context matters. Content is what the stuff we're talking about, right? That's our content. And we would say all of life is just one gigantic conversation, whether it's in my own head or with somebody else or with a group. So we're talking about content. And that's what most everybody's putting our attention on, is content. What we would say is it's more important to pay attention to where are we? What context are we in as we have this conversation? So for example, if one of the things we're dealing with is financing some team. If we're talking about it from a place of scarcity and this is a problem and we're really upset, we're going to create one result. Versus if we say, hey, there's a challenge here. Let's get open and curious. How can this be of service to us? What do we get to learn from it? There's a different outcome we could create. So what we would say is, before you have the conversation, ask yourselves, from what context are we going to have this conversation? Because below the line, the experience will be you might resolve the issue part-time, a little bit, short-term, but you won't resolve the issue permanently. The issues don't resolve permanently below the line. So context matters a lot. We use a model in conscious leadership that's really simple. We just have this line. And we say, in any given moment, either you're above the line or you're below the line. And it is binary. Either in the moment I'm open, I'm curious, I'm willing to learn, or I'm below the line, I want to be right, I'm not very available to your perspective, so I'm closed, and I might be defensive. And so they're two very different contexts, and at any moment you're either in one or the other. And some people say, well, can I be a little bit in both? And we would say, you might be jumping like this back and forth, but you're always in one in any given moment, and then you could flip from another. It's important to be able to locate yourself. Where am I? If we're gathering as a team, one of the things we have with our clients now is when they start a meeting, they just give a thumbs up or thumbs down. In relationship to the topic we're about to talk about, I'm here or I'm here. And so it gives everybody a sense of where are we. And then people who are here below the line are invited to get open and curious so that the conversation can have a different flavor, a different context. When I'm below the line, it could be very subtle. It could be, yes, I'm just waiting for you to finish so that I can go on with what I know is the best way, and I'm not really open to what you're saying. And I can be polite that way. Or I could be quite intense and really dramatic and, what the hell are you doing? Why did you do that? That was absolutely the wrong way to go, and you're fired. So there's a whole range of how aggressive or how subtle we can be below the line. We could also be below the line in a way like you're looking upset, and I don't know how to be with my own emotions, so I might lean forward and do it. You're fine. It's okay. We'll handle this. It's okay. And that's a below the line way of trying to control and be resistant to what's occurring rather than, oh, I notice you feel sad as you've been given the news that we're not going to be able to give you a promotion this year. I want to acknowledge the sadness and recognize I can see that this is a loss for you. So above the line is open and spacious and is accepting of what's actually occurring rather than resisting what's occurring. Below the line can also look like I'm scared, I've come to the meeting late, I'm afraid that you all are going to be upset with me, so I apologize, sorry everybody, it was the traffic, and I can be in a disempowered place. Rather than above the line, I might say something like, hey, I want to acknowledge that I didn't take into consideration traffic this morning, and I showed up 10 minutes late. I want to recognize that that may have been a cost for some of you on your time, and I feel some sadness about not keeping that agreement with you. Above the line has this quality of trust. It's really a place of trust. It's the sense of, I get to learn here. You can't really do it wrong. There is no sense of good and bad and right and wrong above the line. There's just, here's what's happening. What do I get to learn? What's happening is something that is not my preference. So I get to learn how did I co-create that and what can I do differently to make sure that those results don't happen again. So there's a lightheartedness to it. There's breath in above the line. There's possibility. There's a sense of everything that's happening here is an invitation for me to learn and grow. So I don't have to see the world or things that are happening as problems anymore. Everything is an opportunity. And in that way, it makes life gets a lot more fun. Just like, wow, okay, I get to learn stuff here. And it's also got this sense of real self-acceptance above the line that I'm a human being. I'm doing the best I know how. And if I knew better, I'd do better. So there's this sense of easy forgiveness for ourselves and for one another, a lot more empathy, compassion. It's easier to be in connection with others above the line. It's easier to tell the truth above the line because I don't have to try to apologize or control your feelings. And so for me, mostly what I most appreciate is that sense of, it's just, life is so much easier when I don't have to live in the world of there are problems and people to blame and who's going to solve them. When most people learn about our model above and below the line, the mind immediately is going to go to categorizing. That's what the mind does. And so the mind is going to say, oh, above the line is better than below the line. And often the mind will then start to put it into a right, wrong way of looking at it. And what I've learned is for people who've spent a lot of time in the world of life is happening to me below that line, they're going to need to see it as bad or wrong in order to really shift out of it. That's the mindset that happens there. And I've learned not to try to shift or to get people to see it differently. It's certainly how I saw it in the beginning too. And it was from that motivation of this is wrong that got me to start to spend more time above the line. And then once I got more above the line, I looked back and said, oh, it wasn't wrong at all. But that's just the way I had to see it at the time. So we don't look at it at all like being above or below the line, one is better or worse than another. But what I am standing for is wanting to recognize there are costs, pretty significant costs that are below the line, that when we don't face them cause quite a bit of suffering for all of us. So it's not bad that we suffer. It's not bad that we destroy things that might not want to be destroyed. When we're conscious, we would prefer we not go those directions, or when we're conscious, we might prefer not to suffer. So, so we will say, most of you will, if you're interested in learning more about above and below the line, you will go into that contrast for a while, and then it will shift. Ego is this wonderful thing that we have that is here to help us survive. That's its job. And we're not interested in getting rid of egos. That would be, in my opinion, not a particularly valuable use of our time, because without an ego, I'd probably be sitting here drooling and you'd be having to feed me and keep a diaper on me without my ego. So I want an ego, and I just want to let my ego, though, support me rather than me being a servant to the ego. And that's the difference. If I'm above the line, it's like I'm in the driver's seat, my ego's in the back seat, and I'm like, hey, ego, I want to make sure that I'm thoughtful with this customer, or some things I need to pay attention to, right? And the ego would give me some feedback that would help me survive in that interaction. Versus when I'm below the line, the ego's in the driver's seat, and the ego is constantly in control, trying to make sure that something bad isn't happening, and oftentimes it's very irrational. And so we're just saying, can we just change the relationship to ego? I don't want to make ego bad at all. In fact, ego is my great, great ally. And I like to think of it that the ego is like the Wile E. Coyote to the Roadrunner. So the Roadrunner is just going along, and the ego wants to sometimes drops the big boulder right in your path to stop you from just continuing to open and expand, because the ego likes to be in charge. And if you're going to open and expand, the ego is going to be out of a job and being in charge in its mindset. So that ego is going to try to trick you. It's going to say something to you to trick you into being more its servant. And if you're the Roadrunner, you can recognize, oh, that's just a boulder. That's just a thought that ego's putting out, and it's not true. And I can beep beep and pass it by without that thought dropping down on me and knocking me off course. So that's the way I like to have people. I might play with your ego. Let your ego be an ally that's just here to make sure you stay really present, so that you can give your greatest gift to the world. And that's the great value of ego. And if you could have it be something that's a friend, something that you can almost like play with, like a dance with, then you're going to have much quicker time moving into above the line behaviors. So a lot of people get into this whole world of mindfulness and go, oh, I've got to quiet the ego. I've got to make this mind stop. I've got to I've got to be these certain ways. And then I think, well, now you're just going to pay attention to mindfulness from below the line, thinking you're supposed to control something. And now that's just another way you're back in the same old game again. So that's one of the things that I want to say to people who are starting to get curious about mindfulness, is we can do mindfulness from above the line, and we can do mindfulness from below the line. So the moment you think I should be mindful, or I should be a conscious leader, I would say, nah, you shouldn't. That's not true necessarily. And the moment you get into shoulds, you're now going to do all this stuff from below the line. It's not going to really pay off. So I would just say, let that go and come back to, do I want to? Knowing that if I don't do it, could be just as okay as if I do it. Meditation, I could meditate or I could not meditate. Both could be okay. So that I'm free now. So now I'm above the line. And then I can decide, meditation is now something I really want to do. And I'm free to stop it at any time. And now I'm likely going to get some real payoff to meditating. Versus if I'm down here, I know leaders who go, I'm meditating, I'm supposed to meditate. I got this guru I work with, or I've been to these retreats. And they do their thing and they're like, it doesn't work. It's not really working. Of course it doesn't work, because from below the line, maybe you're going to get some temporary relief, but likely you're going to just keep getting into that should. And so you can't shift from that mindset. So I think it's important as we go into conscious leadership, mindfulness, self-awareness, that we pay attention to even that content can be done from two different contexts of above or below the line. So be mindful about, where am I doing this from?